So I'll give some other folks a chance to join before we get started. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Hey, bro.
What's up, Vlad?
Hey, Vlad, how's it going?
I'm well, just grabbing a bite real quick. How about you?
Good.
Are we ready to get going?
Yeah, sure. I can give an update. People are interested. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about what the best way to do this is. Let me try. Let's see what sharing options are available. I guess I can just do it in the chat. Let me try that. So go to the chat. And here's, suppose we have, a message of the form. Suppose we have M of the form. Let's say, so we have V, which is the source of the message, C, which is the value, and H, which is the justification. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So now we can
Mhm.
define a function of the following form: G sub t, where t is the target of the message. In other words, it's the validator that has received this message. Um, so G of t of m is going to be defined to be equal to t bang open paren c in parallel with for x from v and then open squirrely capital G sub v of sorry, it's a big par, so I'll do it that way. Yeah, and I need an index thing here, so that's a bit tricky. Darn, I need a big pi. So I'll write it out this way. Maybe it'll be clear. M prime sub 1 par. It's a lot prettier if you have the index. Par m prime G sub e of m prime sub n. Yeah, it's a lot prettier that way. And close curly. Okay, so can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So that internal par, normally I would write it like if I had, some LaTeX or even simple math stuff in Google Docs, it would be the par of G, of all the M primes from H of M, G of V, G sub V of M prime. And likewise, the V in that for comprehension would be the V of M. So what this does is it gives us, and then in general, if you have a set of messages, then G sub T of the set of messages is just going to be the par of G sub T of M for each M in that set. Does that make sense? Does everyone see what I've done? I've got a nice, simple one-liner recursive function which turns a message directly into a term, a row-line term. Is that making sense?
Sorry, could you remind me what each of the pieces of the message are, V, C, and H?
Yeah, so it's the signing of the message. V is the signing of the method, the validator ID. So it's how we know that the message came from a legal validator. C is the value of the message, the thing that you've committed to, or the thing that the validator has committed to as the proposal, right? Whether it's a bit or a block or some other thing. And then H is the justifications.
What's T here?
T is
How about G?
So G is something we're defining. And sub T, you can think about it as a second parameter. Where did the message show up? T is the validator ID of the validator that actually has received the message.
Not sure. So it's like listening on T, no, sending on.
No, the validator has received the message, and so therefore it was sent to the validator by the validator sitting at V. Does that make sense? You following?
Where do the
I disconnected
primes
and I
come
missed
from?
it.
Okay, let me I wonder if I can show this. Is it possible to do a share with the camera? Oh, you know what I could do is I could just take a photo.
Yeah.
You can?
Well, what is it you want? You want to take a screenshot and then share it?
Well, I can do that. I was just gonna write with the camera, but maybe I can just do this in a Google Doc. That might be the easiest thing to do. Hang on.
There's a whiteboard function inside of Zoom that you could use.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. Go to
Does it share?
go to share, and then I can't do it because you'll be sharing, but in one of the menus up where the top is, it has a whiteboard function.
Huh. Okay, I don't see it on the phone. Maybe I should just move over.
When you're on your phone, the phone, I don't know. Yeah.
Let me switch to my laptop and see.
I'll have to test that feature on an iPad because that would be really convenient using that with one of the pencils that Apple has.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, I've only done it on the desktop version. They have whiteboarding, they have highlighting, annotating, a lot of features we don't usually use too much.
All right, let me try it again. That way we can all see it from a Google Doc.
Yeah.
Google Doc.
And that's another way to do it.
So here, grab a new Google Doc. Okay. Message to turn. Okay, and then here. There. And go stop the screen share for just a second so I can give you the link to the Google Doc. Sorry about this. I should have had this part prepared a little bit more. Okay, so there's the link to the Google Doc. And I'll now do this. Okay, so message M is of the form V, C, H. We can always adapt the form. This is nothing super important about the specific form. You know, it's just our usual suspect of at least it's got a value, at least it's got a signing ID, and at least it's got a set of justifications. Okay, where the is the ID of the source validator, and C is the value or payload of the message, and H is the history. I'm sorry, the justifications. Okay, and we adopt accessor notation, so e.g. V of M is equal to V. Okay, so we've got that. So now define G sub T of M, where T is the target validator. That has received the message. By G sub T of M is equal to T bang C. So this is going to be a term that represents the behavior of the network from the perspective of the target validator. So the network of validators from the perspective of the target validator, as events given by the evidence of the message. And then for, and so this would be not C specifically, but C of M, right? And then for X from V of M, and then a big par. So do and edit. Seriously, there's no symbols? What?
There is. You have to say insert.
There we go. Special characters. Okay. Wow, it's changed remarkably. And there's no favorites anymore. Okay. Pi. There it is. Okay. Okay, it's the pi sub M prime in H of M Okay, that closes that of G sub V of M prime. So we turn it around, right? The perspective is shifted. And M prime. We close that and close that. And there's G. So now, what's the point of this definition apart from the fact that, last time I reminded everyone that we could draw the graphs of the blocks using terms. We can now also draw the evidence, the cryptographic evidence using terms. And, oh, did I screw something up? Should that be squirrely?
I was just thinking that the parenthesis after the M prime should be not curly.
Isn't there
It's
one?
not a big deal. It's fine.
There, that one, yeah? Okay, cool.
Sorry, the V of M prime over.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I missed it, yeah. So we have V of M prime close and then close the subscript. And then,
But yeah, no, it's cool.
and then, but then there's
understand.
one extra. Is there an extra one? There. Is that right? Yes. Closes the subscript and then opens the parameter. Okay, cool. There we go. Okay, so the main point now is that we can ask for equivalences based upon the evidence, right? So in particular, we can now you can actually define a perspective, right? So you can set up equations based upon this equation where you partition these terms, right? So let's say that T has seen, these M's here, M where M a set of messages. Then we can define V sub T and in terms of the messages it has received, and likewise we can define by partitioning actually, sorry, not V, it's V sub V from the, and obviously we can lift accessor notation, right? We can lift accessor notation to sets in the obvious way, right? That's all obvious, right? I don't have to spell that out. Everyone get that?
Yep.
No, please spell it.
Okay. I.e. V of M is equal to V such that V is equal to V of little m, m, n, m, or just straightforwardly V of little m, where m, n, m. Does that make sense? Cool. All right.
Mhm.
So then then for each v in v of m, we can define. So for each v in v of m, we can define v of little v, which is their behavior as evinced by the messages that have been seen by T. So in particular, V is going to be equal to G sub T of M for V for M, sorry, V of M equal V. And, but in particular, you want to do a giant par of that. So you want to do that subscript and there, oops, there. And now then you pull out the, you do this entirely with the, you do this with the history, right? So as you descend down recursively, you want to pull those up into the par. So that's a little bit more complicated. I won't do that on my feet, but you kind of get the idea, I hope, right? So as you descend down, you'll have to update your V of V if you find a message in the justification tree that has the V of M. So there's a little bit of rejiggering here, but it's not too much. It's essentially partitioning your message evidence into a table that tells you that gives you terms in terms of the source of the messages. That you following me? So I'll get a bunch of these capital V sub V's, which are process terms which describe the minimum behavior evinced by the messages that have been seen by T. Is that making sense? Everyone
I
following?
still don't really understand what G is supposed to be, though.
G is a recursive function. It calculates from messages the view of the network by T.
From like a set of messages.
From a set of messages, you can, or from G, I bootstrap G in terms of a single message, and then you can lift. You can lift from this little m to a big M, right? So using the same thing, right? So you can do G of big M. Similarly, G of big M is equal to, oops, grab one of these out of here, sub M in M, G, oh, I need a sub T here, sub T of little m. Right, so now if M is the evidence that T has received so far, then G of big M is that process, and it represents a process that defines the behavior of the network according to T based upon the evidence that T has received. Is that making sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Coolio. Now, all of the
Sorry, I'm the new thing you've added here, the par over a set of messages. Are we? Sorry, let me just parse this for a minute. I think it makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
cool. All right. So the important point is that now we can ask questions like, does G sub T of M, is that structurally equivalent to, and I really, this is annoying. Maybe categories? No. Okay. No. Symbol. Why doesn't math show up? It's really crazy. Okay. All right. Well, shoot. Triple equal. Would that work? Well, that's just useless. Sorry. I'll just write it this way. We can ask this thing equal S equal. So that's my structural equality. G sub T prime of M prime. And more generally, we can ask not structural equal, but by simulation. And the reason we are interested in these equalities is because I believe that this gives us a richer notion of safety. In particular, we no longer have to have single threading for our notion of equivocation. What's that?
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So the point is, I can tighten the screws on this notion or let me put it this way: if I use by simulation as the means by which we get our notion of safety, right? So what we have to do is ultimately a particular how do I say it? A particular action is safe under the assumption that you have a bunch of these equations here, a bunch of by simulations that you're able to establish, and then the single-threaded notion of safety becomes a factorization of that by simulation relation. So you in the same way that, so there's some fairly famous results that all of the equivalences from choice equivalence to failures equivalence to 2/3 by simulation, all of them are in fact factorizations of by simulation, which suggests that, so it's in other words, it's by simulation plus a filter or a collapse that that identifies certain things, which shows that the by simulation is in fact the more fundamental notion in each of the proposed notions of equivalence in concurrency theory. So we can just focus on by simulation, and then I submit that there's a similar there's a similar kind of thing that's going on here. In other words, I can get the single-threaded notion of equivocation as a factorization of a by simulation relation, but then I can weaken that to force a to force a range of behaviors that I consider to be acceptable, or exclude a set of behaviors that are unacceptable. So this is the basic idea, and we can do this both at the level of the message flow, but also the point I was making before is that we can give a similar encoding. So when C is a block DAG, we can give a similar term encoding for the values. I mean, in point of fact, even if it's just bits or numbers, we can give a term encoding, right? We know how to do numbers as processes. But we also know how to do graphs as processes. So we can give a similar kind of thing. And so we can ask a similar question, and now it becomes a kind of split level question about the equivalences that we expect on values, as well as equivalences we expect on the message, on the evidence that the processes have received, right? So so that's what I'm describing now is fleshing out the methodology that I sketched out in Boulder, right? So I'm turning everything into terms, and then I will constrain the behavior of the terms using using formulae. And the reason I relate this to bisimulation is because we have a nice theorem of the form that P is bisimilar to Q if and only if for all phi P satisfies phi if and only if Q satisfies phi. So that's the other theorem that I'm using as a background theorem to go after the to develop the methodology that I sketched out in Boulder. Is this making sense? You guys following the general shape of things? I've taken up way too much time, so I'm kind of curtailing it here, but just wanted to give people a basic sense of how the calculations go now.
Yeah, I mean, the outline kind of makes sense. I'm not 100% on all the details, but you know, I haven't really been, you know, I'm like not really as familiar with this kind of calculus as you are.
Yeah, understood. I mean, the main thing is note that, you know, this message M has an H. Inside that H is a set of messages, right? So we know that T had to be the recipient of the value of the message, right? Otherwise, that, you know, it wouldn't have received the message, right? That's kind of the whole point. We know that V had to have been the target of some other messages, namely the messages that are in the justification of M, right? So all we do is we go and calculate the recursive form of G on those messages, right? And we switch it around because V has to be the target of those messages, right? That they're the justifications. And then we're just calculating that on each of those messages. So it's a nice one-liner. It's really, really straightforward, as is a lot of these kinds of things in this setting. And this allows us to turn everything into a term and then start using the notion of equivalences of terms to constrain what we accept as valid behavior. And this is the basic shape of
So with the equivocation detection, normally the theory is that we try to detect when someone is running two versions of a valid program.
Exactly.
And I'm not sure how to tell if things are
it'll show up in the
so I don't know how to do a bisimulation argument from just messages, or to think about it.
Remember, it's not just messages, right? The whole point is that I get terms out of messages. I get processes, and I can detect. I can apply bisimulation to processes, right? So, in particular, for you wander around the network and you go and check and see if the term you get out of the evidence of one somehow matches the term you get out of the evidence of another. And in general, it's more sophisticated than just a single one, which is why you need this view of the network, right? So it's really, does this view of the network bisimulate this view of the network? And if they don't, something's wonky. So it could just be that messages haven't arrived, or it could be that one of them is lying. And so you make certain assumptions about the completeness of the views, and then you can pick out those instances which are this sort of slashable behavior. So essentially, all I'm doing now is to shift the stuff you've got in your paper over into a setting where we have a bunch of apparatus, which allows us to reason about the behavior of validators. All right, so I've turned it into a behavioral thing rather than merely just the message structure.
And so far, you haven't done anything with the estimator.
I haven't touched the estimator yet. No, this is just, even just this much took us 45 minutes. And I didn't want to.
No, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Can you link I guess you have linked us to the channel. Let me just save this link. The Google
Doc, yeah. So sorry to take up so much time, but yeah, I'll shut up now.
Okay, 1 second. I need a moment to. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this week I've been mostly working on a roadmap that details the different parts of the CBC Casper research that we see as being the things that we need to do to deliver a first kind of viable, scalable consensus protocol that does a sharded blockchain. I worked on a shard creation and destruction and worked out how to do that with the fork choice rule. It's interesting. Shard destruction is more difficult than shard creation. And the interesting thing is that the mechanism that I came up with for shard destruction works for everything except for the parent shard, which is kind of interesting because it's kind of somehow different to destroy the root shard than to destroy any other shard, because the parent determines the fork choice rule of the child, and so you can actually have a clear termination in a way that is not. I'm not sure if it'll have it the same way on the root shard. I don't know. I guess what I'm specifically thinking about is the economic incentivization, because if you have the root shard stop, then you won't have any blocks created to incentivize any of the validators from participating in more messages to finalize that last block. But because of the existence of a parent shard, the economics can still exist while we delete a shard. So I guess like from a distributed systems point of view, like you could totally have like a terminating blockchain, but from an economic point of view, it's problematic because of game theory is weird at the end. So mostly I've been working on that, the roadmap and a little bit on the sharding stuff. Also thought a bit about worked a bit on the moving accounts across shard model. It's not too interesting, but it's cool because it forces us to look at language and our kind of, we have like certain states where like a shard might send a message and it won't be received yet, or like in this case like sent an account over, and so that like for a moment the account doesn't exist on any shard, but it's like in transit.
Yeah, you have to have some kind of atomicity on that, or things are.
We have a very clear atomicity kind of constraint on that.
But then you can't have that state.
Oh, you have that state in the for choice rule. What you never have is that state be finalized. You can never have a finalized send and a finalized not received, but you can have an unfinalized. You can have it unfinalized.
Okay.
So the guarantee is that we never have a finalized atomicity failure.
Got it.
And I think that's like the weakest viable option. And it's good actually because it reduces the amount of orphan messages and therefore improves the overhead of the protocol. Yeah, I guess that's my update. And next week I'll share with everyone our roadmap.
Cool. And who's implementing the roadmap?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, so far, we have like all sorts of different people working on different parts of it, but like, mostly myself, Nate, and Aditya on the research, but there's also like, so there's like the specification and the actual implementation.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm interested in. Who's working on the actual implementation?
Well, so no one yet. I mean, of the full sharding thing. I mean, we're working on prototypes, and we have like prototypes and proof of concepts, but I would say they're not really production.
Okay. Well, maybe next week you could just walk us through the sharding thing.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The roadmap.
No, I meant just sharding. Just sharding.
Oh, like the spec you mean?
Yeah, just the basic algorithm, how you, the framework, how you see.
Primitive.
Yeah. So what's the mechanism?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, it's quite. I think we have a pretty clear story about how it happens. It's basically like a CBC Casper consensus protocol with like a light client and consensus values that correspond to like, different shards. And you don't need to know about all the consensus messages to decide on things from a particular shard.
Cool. well, I'd love to go through a much more detail
Mhm.
of how the sharding works.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, is it? I mean, the way I think about it, from the again, if we think about the you can think about a lattice of. I'm trying to think how this lattice relates to. Okay, yeah, that's the way. So whatever your values are for your consensus, we know that because the values are, going to, at least when we restrict our universe of discourse to have values that are Turing computable, then we have an encoding of the value domain into a row calculus like thing, and so I can then build up a lattice of namespaces, right? So that would be a lattice that's effectively described by some collection of channels, right? That restrict basically the terms that we're willing to use as values.
Well, I mean, we do restrict them significantly by using this like block schedule thing. I mean,
Sure.
at the moment we're doing just like basically a blockchain per shard.
Yeah, I understand. Then you have that lattice, and then you have a separate lattice, which is the lattice of the validators, right? So
Basically, I have a different validator set on every shard. From the point of view of like the fork choice rule.
Yeah, understood. I'm with you so far. And then there's this assignment of the lattice of validators to the lattice of.
I wouldn't say that there's a lattice of validators. I mean, because I don't have any notion of join.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is
common ancestor.
Yeah, but they don't. There isn't. How do I say this? I want to talk about actual versus possible. So there's a lattice of validators that is possible, and then there's a sparse inhabitation of that, which is actual. Right. So you have some.
You're talking about the lattice of subsets of the validator sets? That's right.
So the possible one is the lattice of the validators, the subsets of all of the validator sets, and then and then the actual one is the sparse lattice that embeds in that somewhere. And then you have a mapping from the lattice of values, the value spaces, which I'm essentially calling namespaces. So you have a mapping from that lattice over to the sparse sublattice. And then, well, you have to, like, for each sort of confined value space or namespace, you have to have some validator set that's actually validating that one.
Yeah, but it may not actually be part of the consensus values.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You have a lattice just of the consensus values, right? And so for each one that you're investigating, you have to have a set of validators that's validating that one.
I mean, something like that. I mean, it's like for the properties that we're deciding about, we need to know about the set of validators who determine.
That's correct. That's exactly right. And now, when you have a relationship between two value spaces, so the issue is, how can one shard So I'm going to call a shard this combination of the value space and a set of validators that are actually validating that. So we have two shards. How does one shard know that the other shard hasn't been doing any monkey business?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I mean, there's
So
a few
all the
questions that
validators in
you might be referring to, right?
all the validators in one shard could collude and say we want to rip off all the other shards.
So there's a few different things. There's a few different things that they could do, right? So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking about.
Well, they could be willing to confirm double spins and other kinds of equivocations, in order to, because it's economically advantageous to all of the members of the shard if they can attract enough shards to come and do transactions with them.
I mean, they don't get to stay on that shard, and they don't get to choose the validity rules for those blocks. And so the only way they can really do that is by making valid blocks. Is that what you're thinking about in valid blocks?
Okay, so this is interesting. So, you're saying you have a random assignment of validators to shards. Is that
No,
correct?
it doesn't need to be random, but there's definitely like rotation, and it's non-fixed and not voluntary. Like they get assigned.
Okay, and then the other assumption that you're making is what?
I mean, I have a fourth choice rule that like only relies that these blocks from these other shards are valid.
And how and does block validity include the validity of a transition in a computational model?
Yeah.
Okay, so that may be the rub. Okay, those are both reasonable things to investigate. Cool. I have to jump over to Dev Stand-Up, but
Okay. Well, Michael Versh, you got any updates? Anyone else got updates?
Nope,
Last
have to
minute
call it here.
update? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
No, nothing from me.
All right. Well, goodbye, everyone.
Yep, thanks.
Later.
This was great, guys.
Sweet. Cheers. Bye.